Is the mic already functioning? Good morning to everybody. We know that 9 o'clock, after so many different interesting sessions yesterday and the day before, is a challenge. Many of you went out to see Oviedo. I welcome you to this session on circular economy. I'm very happy that we have the chance, under the circumstances of this conference, Smart Destinations, to address the issue of the circular economy in the tourism sector. As you know, UNWTO committed 10 years ago with other governments, the government of France, Morocco, and Korea, to accelerate the shift towards more sustainable consumption and production pattern. On this journey, we have made many experiences. We have focused the last year and a half on the concept of circular economy. And in that context, right now, right at the beginning, before we start the session, to show you also that we give continuity to this discussion, we partner with the construction sector of the One Planet Network, which is the rebranded 10 years framework of programs, one of the most important delivery mechanisms of SDG 12, Sustainable Consumption and Production. And we will deliver in New York during the high-level political forum a review mechanism of the SDG processes in countries where experiences are shared. We partner and have a side event, at the high-level political forums ministerial segment on Wednesday. With further ado, I right now have the pleasure to introduce here my distinguished panelists. They are reflecting different facets of experience. I met them at different stages of the discussion over the year and a half. To my left is Pekka Huovoli-La, coordinator of the One Planet Network and Construction Program, coming from Finland, associated with the Ministry of Environment. Pekka, very much coming here. Next to him is Petra Stusek. She's the managing director of Ljubljana Tourism in Slovenia. Next to her is Hermann Blomeyer, head of environment of Munich Airport in Germany. And with us is Judy Lane, head of, it's a different order I have here, the Chief Marketing Officer, but I need to get the title right. Chief Marketing Officer, Western Cape Tourism, Trade and Investment, South Africa. That's a long title, Judy. I prefer to address you then later on by Judy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's start right now. The importance of the circular economy is clear to most of you. There's a difference between the concept of the linear economy and the circular economy, and I would invite immediately Pekka to address the difference of the concepts, and then going into the experiences you have made in the construction sector, applying the circular economic concept.
Okay, thank you, Dirk, for the introduction. I have also some slides that may be shown later on, but to start from the buildings and construction sector, we are often seen as a bad guy in the field of climate change mitigation. The sector emits, let's say, 40% of the resource consumption, waste also 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But we see that actually we are the solution, because the built environment is actually the best investment option to mitigate climate change and also to adapt to that. And in this One Planet Network program, we have chosen circular economy as a key topic. We work for resource efficiency. And what is important is to look at the whole life cycle of buildings and the built environment, and not only buildings, but also the surrounding neighborhood. Quite often the circularity is seen as, let's say, recycling and reusing waste, but that is only at the last stage. Actually, you should start from the manufacturing, design, operation, and demolition and refurbishment of the buildings. We have shown that we can let's say, recycle our own waste, but also that from other industries. So we can take like fly ash from the coal mines and use that as a building technology. So there's only one aspect how we can see this circularity there, but also I think we should consider which are the, let's say, passive solutions in the design phase. How in the tourism sector, as an example, you could reduce the heat loads, and how you could use, let's say, the appropriate clean technologies to providing better, let's say, living and occupational environments for people, to provide health conditions without creating burden to the surrounding environment. So I stop here, and I'm happy to contribute later on with more details on this.
I will not let you stop. I will ask you a question related to that, especially as our problem, before we come to the other panelists, our problem is usually where to start. This prioritization is whenever somebody is going back to his normal work, he's again in a rhythm that he has difficulties to leave that rhythm, and he needs to prioritize certain actions. When we are thinking of the audience here, is the construction sector a sector for tourism managers to make the first call when they are going back there tomorrow?
Yes, I think in different occasions where these issues have been, let's say, outnumbered and explained what can be done even today, it's still not known how much better, let's say, improvements could take place. And I think the challenge is more on communication. Those investors and actors in the tourism sector should communicate to their customers better how their, let's say, tourist destinations are designed, which are the sustainability aspects. As a consumer, like myself, when I'm choosing hotels where I go, I feel I don't have enough information about how these things have been taken into account. So I think this dialogue between the investors and tourist developers and the construction supply chain should be intensified, and more, let's say, qualitative data given to people, and also quantified data for the decision making. So we can start, if not tomorrow, then today already.
Then Petra, today, well, then you can speak on behalf of a destination like no other here. And where would you see the suggestion of Pekka right now fitting?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, actually, this type of conversations do brighten the horizons, because me speaking from the perspective of a destination, honestly, to say from the start, you have to start with yourself, and that is getting new aspects and act according to them. Like we as a tourism body or the board wouldn't actually talk to the constructors themselves, but it is, however, very important that when the new infrastructure is built in the destination, that it is built according to the sustainable standards and being a smart destination in all of the aspects. However, what you can do as a destination is implement later on when the infrastructure is already set, especially if it's let's say the old one, not just built. So, you know, with helping the managers to introduce the, I don't know, eco labels that are, let's say, internationally known, so people are not confused with the local ones, helping them to implement all the sustainable practices into their hotels, bars, restaurants. We, for example, also built sort of a platform for the exchange of local food, so the local bars, restaurants, and hotels would have local guests for the local food for the guests. And in the past 2 years, 17 tons of food were exchanged between the local farmers and the local hotels, bars, restaurants. And this is also an offer that was really well received from the locals, not only from the tourists. So yeah, to go back from the start, you have to start with yourself. You have to identify everything you already have. and try to make changes there first before you implement new infrastructure, new offer, new strategies, and so forth.
Petra, thank you for that example. And you stressed the importance of certification, you stressed the importance of local sourcing. This is something we are in the tourism sector very aware, and you are doing that in an extraordinary manner, applying that and communicating it through that. Pekka, when I come back to you in the construction where we have these long life cycles of buildings, certification, is that the way?
I would start, if you allow, a bit before that, I mean, for the infrastructure, because of life cycles. So if you build up infrastructure, that's for hundreds of years. For buildings, it may be 40 years, 60 years. But maybe some parts of the buildings, they will need some refurbishment. They need modernization. So that's one thing that you should think about, how, let's say, the different life cycle affect to that. At present, the certification schemes we have in the building sector for building products, there are over 300 labeling systems. So there's a bit, let's say, confusion in the market. What comes to the building level, there are around 35 certification schemes. A couple of them are international. Many of them are not always customized to meet the local conditions, which may create a bit, let's say, problem. You may exclude the local supply chain, local actors, and you rather need to import materials and solutions that are fitting to systems that are developed somewhere else. So it's a bit tricky question. I think what I would rather go would be to have a, let's say, science-based, international standardization-based information provided, and I think the certification schemes will follow later on. In Europe, we are now harmonizing that under the system called levels, and that's based on life cycle assessment. At present, the certification schemes may be let's say, leading on the average to good direction, but they are not like best option available in all environments because of lack of localization.
Petra, as you always innovated and committed really to be at the forefront of turning green and being environmental friendly, but never forgetting the social cultural component. Our sector, the tourism sector, is a bit more complex than construction, I would say. That is one of the huge challenges, the value chains we are sitting in. Would you see something similar coming in the tourism sector?
Similar to the standardization, or the or similar to what?
What similar? Pekka right now suggested the standardization to foster over their circularity. Yes.
Of course, the bases need to be, let's say, on the same ground everywhere. But like Pekka said, and I deeply agree with it, it needs to be localized. That's why the local authorities on all levels need to not only communicate, but really work hand in hand together. So the, let's say, well-known standards someplace else, they do localize, and that they're appropriate for the local level. It also, obviously, in tourism sector. What we are doing is we actually really do work hand in hand with the National Tourist Board, but also with the Ministry to place in all the possible local standards that are suitable, international standards that are suitable for tourism, whether it be gastronomy or eco-labels, infrastructure, or any other aspects. Like you stressed out, it's a complex branch. Important thing is that everyone who's in the destination actually accepts this and take it as his, what we did as theirs. What we did is we organized the workshops for all the parties, like for the restaurants, and we told them the story about the local food and how they can make it in their own way, because the five-star restaurant would do it differently than the, let's say, a simple local inn. But the main thing is that there are the local ingredients and local recipes done their way. This is what we see as sustainability. Not that everyone does it the same way like they used to do it 100 years ago. Then we also organized workshops for the hotels or accommodation facilities for these international eco-labels that are affordable, because they can be really expensive to obtain, and to show them that that in a mid-term, not even in a longer term, they will gain out of it. They will have profit out of these new eco-labels. And the result was that we were the first ones in the world to get the hostel with the international eco-label. So,
Peter, can I ask you from your experience, is there a label existing where criteria of circularity plays a role?
yes and no. I mean, the circularity is such a buzzword now, but it's actually when you have to, nowadays, but it's actually you have to find your own DNA, your essence of the destination on the spot, and deal with what you have and turn it into positive practices that will be returned, reused, recycled, and so forth. So in my opinion, this should be, I mean, the circularity should be the part of any scheme anyhow, but now there are coming in new criteria, especially for that. But like I said, I deeply believe before the circularity was really so, let's say, popular, even back then, the standardization was actually, I mean, it was part of this standardization, just not stressed out so much.
Thank you. That brings me, Herman, to airports. We all use them. We fly in and out to destinations, and airports are normally not seen as the system we are regularly talking to when it comes to environment. But it seems that your airport has made significant progresses in this field on circularity, not to speak. Happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be here. I think you're correct. We, as an airport, play a major role in the tourism chain. And if you allow, I brought a few slides with me.
Sure, please.
To give you a short presentation about the Munich airport and what we are doing in sustainability and in environment-friendly operations. So, I'd like to start. Most of you, I think, expected an aircraft on my cover sheet, but I brought with me a curlew. A curlew, it's a migratory bird. We as an airport, we are a bird sanctuary. That's my first information I gave to you. And they are breeding at Munich airport, and I do not know. We fixed a transmitter at one of the birds, and the bird flew to Spain. They leave the airport in June, flying to Spain, and coming back to Munich airport in February and March. My short talk is divided in 3 parts. First, I would like to give you some information about Munich airport. Then I would like to highlight the role of the airport in terms of sustainability. Munich airport is located around 30 kilometers north of Munich in the heart of Europe. The airport is a green airport. It was opened in 1992, and we have 2 runways. The airport is connected by an autobahn and also by 2 suburban railways. We do not have a connection to the railway network of the Deutsche Bahn. It's a bit. A few facts and figures. Around 44 million passengers used the airport. You can compare Munich airport a little bit to Madrid or to Barcelona. and we counted around 405,000 movement. That means takeoffs and landings. The adding of the employees was a little bit surprising. We expected that 32,000 people work for the airport, but we counted 35,000 employees. Yeah, the main question is how do sustainability and environmental protection fit to the aviation industry? And to keep it simple, our slogan is think globally, act locally. I think you heard that before, you know that, and think sustainably and act responsibly. There are several players in terms of sustainability at the airport. Most people only know the airport as their passengers. I mentioned 44 million, but although we deal with the airlines, we have the other businesses, a few subsidiaries. We have the airport administration, and of course, the connection to the whole world. Locally, we identified different relevant sectors in terms of environmental protection. That's a simplified layout. So we identified each square meter according to its environmental relevance. For example, the administration side, my colleague mentioned the airport buildings, the management, the technology. We decided between the environmental issues in the non-public sector and in the public sector. That means how is the area maintenance done? What about the lighting? Water sources is a main issue also. And then the aircraft de-icing, for example, or the drainage system. That gives you an impression in different colors. In the end of 2016, we set, or I must say our board set a very ambitious goal for Munich Airport. Our main goal is to reduce our CO2 emissions as an airport in operations by 2030 from now 120,000 tons CO2 emissions to zero emissions. We want to be the first German CO2 neutral airport in 2030. That's real ambitious. We think we can reduce 60% of our CO2 emissions attributed to the airport by technology, and we will have to reduce 40% by offsetting measures. According to the Paris Agreement, we're still waiting what they are deciding, but our main issue is also to find the possibility to reduce the CO2 emissions in the region, or partly in the region. One number we think we need for that program, 150 million euros. 150 million euros for CO2 emissions. That means it's a whole year profit of the airport in equals. How do we do that? I got three short examples. That's one good picture I often present in conferences and meetings because it shows that you can see the CO2 reduction. On the left-hand side, you see the old-fashioned lighting of the airport. It's the orange colored. On the right-hand side of the picture of our new satellite, you see the new LEDs. And this is a pretty good example for sustainable development. And why? First off, if you modernize the lighting, you spare energy. And so you reduce the CO2 emissions. That's for the environment. On the other hand, you spare money because you do not need so much electricity for the lighting. You have a very short time of return of invest by using LEDs. We spare around about 12,000 tons of CO2 per year by replacing the old-fashioned lighting. And the third part, the social aspect, is that the workers at the apron, they are also very keen of that measures, because they say it's it's more suitable for us to work in that daylight situation instead of in the orange side. It's pretty good for them. And the last point, you see the lines, the light of the LEDs is much more sharp, not so blurry like on the left-hand side. So the cone of the light is more short, so we do not draw the insects. So that's also, insect is also a good measurement. We want to replace our fleet. In the next months, we will receive a lot of more vehicles, 128 electro vehicles. You see now we got around 350, but that's also a pretty good measurement to reduce CO2 emissions. That's the global side. We also have a look on the local side. In 2008, we set also goals, for example, here for drinking water consumption. Our goal is to reduce the water consumption per liter. Here, my colleague from South Africa, she will have a look at that. We try to reduce our drinking water consumption to 21.6 liter per pax. The reduction is obviously, of course, also caused by the increasing numbers of passengers, but nevertheless, it's pretty good, and we reached our goal right now. Last summary, a summary from my side. I think we are a company leading in CO2 neutrality. We try to reduce our resource consumption, achieve high air quality, implement, of course, our noise protection. Noise is a main issue in airport operations. And we, as I mentioned when I started, we are also a bird sanctuary, and we have different projects in nature conservation and biodiversity. So sustainability and environmental protection will become even more important in the future for us. And therefore, we need dedication and measures along the entire travel chain, and we think we are an important link in that travel chain. You have the chance to look at our website if you need more information, and that's all for the day. Thank you very much.
Herman, this leads directly to my question, but please join us over here. You stated over there you want to become the first green 5-star airport, was that right?
We try to.
You try to. What is the incentive to do so?
There are different incentives, of course. We start thinking about sustainability and green airports about 10 years ago, about 15 years ago, and I can keep it short and simply. In my mind and the mind of the airport, we think sustainability or a green airport is our license to grow. Mm-hmm.
Now, are you in contact regularly when it comes to those initiatives with the rest of the destination Munich? Is there a link? Is this stimulating each other, or how does that work?
I think to that question, there are two parts. First part is that we try to communicate with our stakeholders. We try to communicate with the other businesses, with the travelers. We inform them on the airport side, on the local side. We try to inform them about what we are doing. That's one main issue. On the other side, we gave that information also to our colleagues who are dealing with airlines or who are dealing with other destinations, with smart destinations. Though they get the information that if they travel, if they take off from Munich airport, they have I will say, green surrounding. They have people and they have staff and they have measurements where we have a look on the sustainability side.
Thank you, Herman. That right now, Judy, is now the question for you. And we tried right now to see how to enter into a destination, how to enter there in a very specific point when pushing and initiating the discussion, not only environmentally, but then seeing the beginning of circularity, that resources are used differently than to the way we have seen that before in a linear economic environment. Now, Judy, you have a slightly different story to tell. You had an emergency. Tell us what this emergency has produced for your kind of thinking related to the use of resources, to tourism and circularity. Judy, please.
Thank you. I think I'm also going to show a presentation because it answers the question. I think the biggest lesson we learned was, even though we thought we were ready for a crisis, when it happens, you realize where your gaps are. South Africa is a country that's living on the edge. We are a semi-arid region, and on any day you could have a flood in one city, and 800 miles further you could be having a drought. What we experienced in 2017, is it off? There we go, was a 1 in 1,000 chance of 3 years of drought. No one saw this coming. You think you're prepared, you think you know what you're doing, and then something like this happens. We knew by the second year of our drought that we needed to start saving water and that we were in problems, but without a sense of urgency as businesses and citizens, we didn't save enough. On the 17th of January this year, the mayor announced that they were going to turn the taps off in 30 days. This didn't mean we had run out of water. It meant that the municipality was taking control back of the water. Until then, we could open our taps, let it run, we could flush the toilets as many times, take long baths. But the problem was we weren't going to have enough water to get us through to our winter rains. The good news is our taps never got turned off and we made it through. But we experienced 50 days that changed our lives forever. It changed, most importantly, it changed our relationship with water. One of the biggest lessons was that 60% of our water was being used by citizens in their homes. So they were watering their gardens, filling their pools, washing their cars, leaving taps running. And that's where the biggest issue was sitting. How do we as citizens change our behavior? And the guest spoke about long-term cycles and preparing. We couldn't. We had to make changes really, really quickly in our homes and our buildings. So one of the biggest changes was those JoJo tanks. If you come to Cape Town now, you'll see that in a lot of the gardens, in a lot of the business premises, at the hotels, those are water tanks for catching rainwater. The other was grey water systems. So how could we bring grey water systems quickly into our homes, into our guest houses, that could reuse the water from the washing machines, from the baths, from the basins. The other was the changing of gardens. So we've gone from beautiful grass gardens to more water-wise gardens, which were less reliant on water. And we managed to, and now we're a global example of how you can drastically reduce your water consumption. So we had a 60% reduction. So that's 209 liters per day per person. And that's not just drinking water. That's for washing dishes, for food prep, for doing your clothes, for bathing, everything. We got that down to 87. We're now on restrictions of 50 liters per day per person, and I can promise you it doesn't change your life. You're not going to die. You're going to be able to shower. It really isn't so hard when you're in a crisis and you learn to do it. The other thing was around the tourists. So at the height of our tourist season, tourists only add 4% to our population, which means their water usage isn't really big. But during the crisis, people didn't want tourists to come because tourists were going to use our water, and tourists didn't want to come because they were scared they were going to use the locals' water. So we created an app for tourists to understand their water usage. And what this then allowed them is to be conscious of water when they came to visit us, but also turn their water use to good use and donate it to water sustainable initiatives like the one shown here. The other thing we learned quickly was about collaboration for joint value. This is the first solar-powered desalination plant in South Africa that's going into a small town that's got crucially low water levels, and a very small town that relies on tourists to survive and maintain jobs. And the other one was around buildings, and which we've spoken about, and this is the building in the waterfront, and their whole practice is around sustainability and climate change. So we obviously along the cold Atlantic Ocean, so they use the cold water of the sea to cool the building in summer, and then in winter they use the heat from the IT rooms, the server rooms to move it. There's grey water systems throughout it. They encourage their workers or the workforce to use public transport, and 60% of the rubble was recycled from this building. So I think just that's a quick way of how we had to learn very quickly to move from a linear economy to a circular economy.
Judy, thank you very much, and it shows that sometimes it's the need of an incident that needs to be something which is changing your way of thinking, because what you just showed over here is the technology is there, the infrastructure can be built, it is possible. Right now, what we don't want is to wait for more crisis to initiate the change. But that turns the question now to Pekka, how much infrastructure do we need to make that happen? How intelligent needs this infrastructure to be? Is this so impossible to think at an early stage about that?
The earlier you think, the better. I think the challenge is mainly mainstreaming the good examples, like you were facing a threat, you had a problem, you had to solve it, and you found a solution. Well, that could have been done without the problem also, because all the things were available. In infrastructure, it's also depending on the actors, the utility companies, other let's say, main players there. If we talk about, like, we work more on the city environment, the tourist destination may be different, but there the challenge is to get all the players around the same table, like the client, supply chain, and also the infrastructure providers. Many things can be done already today, but that requires also new thinking in the business models. Quite often those, let's say, companies investing, having long-term investments, their earning logic is, let's say, based on the old invoicing system. So if, as an example, energy provider gets their money out of selling energy out, so their profit is, the more they sell, the better. If the model will be different, if the client would just order like certain environments, and the supplier, then the energy utility company, might optimize how they can do it in a most efficient way, then their earning logic would be to reduce the energy consumption. So these are the things that we have to overcome when we talk about the infrastructure. But the optimization at the individual building level is not the best. So you have to look at the surrounding neighborhood there.
Did this logic change by the suppliers in Cape Town?
It definitely changed. I think we became more innovative, we became more entrepreneurial. The suppliers and the supply chain management had to find new ways to work a lot quicker. And I think what it also taught us is looking forward. I think our next big concern is around waste, and how supply chain and how businesses will start working around the next crisis before it hits.
But you said quicker. Let me go a bit deeper in there, because it's not only quicker. When it comes to saving water, you need to, especially when it comes to circularity, you need to invest into infrastructure. And that is one of the very important things then to use grey water in a different economic activity, which is maybe produced by the tourism sector. Is this something you have on your roadmap?
Definitely. I think just in terms of using water better, we're seeing, like I said, it's about now designing for the future. Everything we do is we think about how does this impact the water usage? How do we ensure that we can use water better? How do we recycle water? And then what kind of products and infrastructure do we need to do that?
Thank you very much, Becca. This indicates what you were saying before, that actually the suppliers also will upgrade in the services they are providing, because it's pretty simplistic. If you are just producing and you are selling, and you are needing then to expand according to the needs of the client like an airport, you need to provide then additional advice on how this resource could be used more efficiently. There are examples of the LEDs being rented to the airport of Amsterdam, and because of that, can you explain on how that happened? Otherwise, I'll do that. That because of this form of rental concept of actually light, the company is always interested to provide the latest bulbs, the latest technology, so that actually what is happening in the airfield, what you just mentioned before, Herman, that there's light. So it's no longer the resource electricity which was on sale. It's actually a different element, something you could imagine also for destinations and airports in other fields. Petra?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would maybe go a little bit back to what Becca said when he referred to new business models on existing things, destinations, infrastructure, or whatever. So maybe I would just quickly also go through to put the frame what we did on the existing thing on the destination level. So that might give you a little bit of a frame. Where's the clicker? Thank you. Okay, just to tell you what we were, just to, like I said, to give you a little bit of a frame what we did on the destination, because first you need to, I come from Ljubljana, which is the capital city of Slovenia, the country which is not the largest one. It's 26,000 square kilometers and 2 million people, but that gives us also the chance to be a role model, which we are really proud of to actually be one. So what we did was we first went through what's our essence, where do our locals and tourists actually move, where are the tourist areas, how to move or how to manage the tourism flows, how to take them out of the city, the tourists and the locals, and actually how to do the decentralization. So we were doing this because we closed the city traffic for center. We had new venues, we could use new places for events and so forth. So this is how you drive people out of the city center, because you give them the really good offer someplace else, not where it's supposed to be. Where you need to actually start from after you, let's say, see what your DNA is, you need to revamp what you already have. That's why we were working really hard on regeneration and revitalization of places, not only in the city center, but also around the city center, in the other areas of Ljubljana, which also benefit locals from. In the city center, we cannot not even imagine now that the cars would go through the main vein or through the main spot, very heart of the city, the 3 bridges, or we even cut the well, it doesn't go. We even cut the main vein with the traffic. This was the main street, and now it's shared space where locals, tourists, everyone is really taking or is really enjoying the atmosphere of the city, and that really helped us to connect all the local stakeholders, from the local inhabitants to the local restaurants, bars. Everyone was so much more feeling the pulse of the city and wanted to be part of it. We introduced them based on all the things that we've done, like the city center closure and so forth, other, or recognized rather, before introduction, other sustainable practices like green chain supply that I already mentioned, the green tours, the waste management scheme. Ljubljana is actually the first capital going towards zero waste capital, because already 95% of the waste is being reduced and recycled and used as a fuel, and that's what also gives the value to the tourists. Even the tap water, we have like chemically untreated tap water for 400 years, and we are talking about the capital city, and we're really aware of this and telling this story also to our tourists, because tourists can benefit from the tourists and locals, both. And we are experiencing that locals are really, really in the story when you tell them in the way that they accept. They all benefit from these new ways of living in Ljubljana. For example, if you close the city center, then you need to give an alternative, such as the electrical cars that take people for free around the city center, or the electrical train that's for tourists, but also very beloved by locals. The shared bicycles system, of course, the shared electrical car system, electrical fillings everywhere, the mobile app Urbana, which was also internationally recognized as the best mobile ticket application and awarded for it. And of course, like every destination, you need to know that today the accessibility in the digital era, the accessibility of information is the most important one. But I personally do not really believe in the apps itself, like the app of the destination. What I do believe is in the special apps like Ljubljana by Wheelchair, so accessibility for everyone, to be equal for everyone. And of course the digital platforms. So all this actually results in the sort of, however corny does that sound, it's actually verified by the locals and tourists. We have 91% of locals being happy with the tourism and other developments in the city center, and that's what we are. That's what the drive us to go through forwards the sustainability and circularity.
Thank you, Petra, very much. The Green Capital of Europe in the year?
Yeah, 2016.
2016. Yeah. Now, dear panelists, I would like to ask one question, which is uniting us again. The importance of technology and measurement in what we are doing and what we are aiming at circularity. Can you just explain now how important you see that today and in the future, technology and the measurement to improve our sustainability and especially to work towards circularity? Who wants to start? Herman, please.
I would like to add one point, not only technology or metering. I think another necessary task is all the modeling. Mm-hmm. And if you look forward, and that's the main point. If you look forward, you need a prognosis. What is going on, and for that you also need models. Not only, for example, for air quality or for noise, although what you are expecting in water consumption, for example, or in CO2 emissions, for example, or at least in what the guests of an airport, around 45% flying for business reasons. That means 55% are on the airport for other reasons, for example, for tourism. You have to know what they are looking for, and though it's very important to go the next step forward, to measure what they are doing, to meter, for example, each drop of water we use, we are metering. We count each kilogram of waste which is produced. That's very important. And then you find the right technology to find a sustainable way. And my last point is often the companies do not know that there is a short time of return of invest. They do often not think about it. I would like to give you an example. That's the LEDs. Though if you measure the electricity, if you make a investment plan, you often recognize that ROE, for example, for LEDs is about 2 or 4 years. That's nothing at all. So metering is very important, and it's increasing to meter all. We're also thinking about smart metering all our buildings. We do. That would be the next step. And that's one point, and modeling also.
Thank you very much. Maybe first Pekka, and
if this is so, I can use that a bit building on what you said on measuring, even though the concept of circularity has been around for quite some time, since the 70s, it was in regulations in China in the early 80s already in the land use, etc. Still, this measurement issue is a topic where we could proceed, and there are a couple of frameworks already created for that, but still people often mean different things when talking about circularity. So agreeing a common core set of metrics could help us in assessing where we are, and once we know where we stand, we can set objectives for the improvement. And it may be that in airports you already identified your issues, maybe in South Africa you have identified your core topics, but I think there are many areas where that work should be needed to measure where you are and then set objectives for improvement.
Thank you very much. Please.
We used technology slightly different from a marketing perspective. We thought, what we found in terms of change of behavior was, if you explain to somebody the problem up front and help them be part of the solution, you got that change of behavior a lot quicker. So, for example, in the schools, there's something called the droplet system, which was invented, which helped the schools realize how much water they're using and allow the children to be part of the solution and save money for the school. And then the other was the My Water Footprint we developed. We used technology for visitors to understand the situation and how they could be part of the solution. So it was a different way of using technology to change behavior.
Thank you very much. I think we are coming to an end. I would give the audience the chance to ask a question, if there is any.
Robert Lancard, former international field servant from UNWTO. Well, you know, I was looking at Paris, the Olympic Games of 2024. What you know that the main objective of these Olympic Games is to use the concept of circular economy for everything, even for the sport, you know, and they are trying to develop even a new concept, sustainable sport, you know. And what do you feel about what they are doing? Do you know this case? Do you have more information? And my other question concerns San Francisco. I'm living a part of my time in San Francisco, and I want to know what you feel about what their policy. It's a municipality, it's a city policy, and they're doing quite well. Thank you very much.
Any of the panelists is aware of the Paris preparations?
I could very quickly say what they did in London in 2012 in the media center. That was a temporary building that was built just for the media purposes there. And it was serving that for I think 9 months, because the Paralympics were after that. Once it was finished, didn't have any windows, just for TV, let's say, transmission. After that, they removed the facades and it was turned into office. So it was planned in the beginning to be a multi-purpose office building where the first use was for 9 months to serve a media center. And the same principle could be applied in many cases. For Paris, I think, I don't know enough details about that, but the concept is clear.
The Paris Olympics are the first of the Olympic Games dedicated to circularity, fully dedicated to circularity. However, they are still in the preparation, so there is nothing right now to be shared what is done. It's the commitment to make that mega event also a stimulator then later on for the city of Paris and the wider region. With that, my dear panelists, I thank very much Judy Lane, Petra Stusek, Pekka Huovila, Herman Blomeyer, for being with me here on this panel on circularity, where we saw many different views, how to advance that, many different triggers, how that can happen. We hope to see next year when we are reflecting again on circularity, although the concept is existing for such a long time, then the first implementations at a larger scale in destinations to be able to present to you best practices from the tourism sector. I thank you very much for being with us here. A round of applause, please.